All right. Hello, I'm Caleb. I am using my wife's computer, hence our delay in getting started, but I think I have everything pulled back up. We are recording this call, so don't say anything that you want used against you in a future presidential campaign. Otherwise, you should be safe. We've got about 60 folks in the call, which is awesome. Thank you to everybody. That's obviously way more than we can go through to introduce ourselves and get to know each other. But over the course of tonight, feel free to be in the chat as often or as little as you'd like. The chat's really helpful, especially if we're kind of in like a longer talking session. If you got questions, a lot of times people can help answer. So don't hesitate to jump in and drop questions in there. You're also welcome to interrupt me at any point. Sometimes the raise hand feature works well. Sometimes it's easier just to go off of mute and drop in something. So either or. Let's see. Yeah, so that's kind of the run of show notes for now. We're going to get started by going over the course profile and course map. A lot of this hinges on kind of understanding where we are in the race. So folks that are familiar with it, this will be redundant. If you're new, this is a really good way to get a sense for things. So we're going to start with the course. That usually takes about 40 minutes. Then we're going to jump in and do some get some info from the Maurten team. So we've got Bill Dittman, who's he works for Maurten. He's also run and finished High Lonesome. He goes out to Hancock every year, so he's a great person. Stoked to have him. And then we're also joined by Lauren, who's their head nutritionist for Maurten. So they're going to talk through what we have, how to use it, some of the basic questions, and then it's a great chance to like ask any specifics if you have like really nuanced questions. Then we're going to quickly talk about the gear list. That should go quickly because it's fairly straightforward. So we'll go through that. And then after we're done with the gear list, we'll go to the Q&A with our panelists. So we've got 4 folks here that I asked to be a part of that. So that's going to be past finishers. Some of them have 7 finishes and some of them have 3 and 2. So there's lots of experience in here. Different locales too. I tried to spread it out so folks can resonate with where that person's maybe doing their training or logistically where they're coming from. So that's a really good session, and we'll just go with that as long as it works. So sometimes that goes pretty long. And then we'll cap it off with just kind of a rapid fire, I call them like little bits and pieces. Websites you can use, some tools, weather data, logistics, that kind of stuff. And then we usually just end with a wide open Q&A with me, which is just anything I didn't cover that you might have a specific question on. So I'll be on here till we're all done. Obviously, you're welcome to jump in and jump off as you need. Do try to stack the cooler stuff at the front just because I know these meetings can go pretty long and we've all got different time zones. So, all right. I am regretting making this a waiting room because I've been having to admit each one of these people individually, which is great. On the plus side, Anthony Miller of 7,000 Feet Running Co. texted me, and I did not text him back. But Anthony, can you hear me? And it won't work?
Yeah, can you hear me, Caleb? Hello.
I can hear you.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Thanks for letting me dial in.
Absolutely, man. Sorry I didn't get back to your text. I had my hands full of wood stain. But yeah, I'm cool with it. If you want to just give us a little bit about you in the shop.
Yeah, appreciate that. So, hey, everybody, my name's Anthony Miller. My wife and I, we bought 7,000 feet in September of 2025. I finished high-low this past year as well. So got a buckle and going to finish it again this July. Looking forward to it. But hey, I just wanted to, welcome everybody to the call, but also let you know, if you're in Salida, in the Sawash, in the area and you're training, come by the store. We'll give you 10% off. Just tell us you're running the race. It's kind of on the honor system, but we just wanted to make that clear to everybody. Everything in the store, nutrition, shoes, apparel, rain jackets, poles, you name it. So yeah, just come on by, say hi to us. And if you don't buy anything, come on by and say hi to us anyway. We'd love to talk about the race and talk about your training. So anyway, Caleb, that's all I got, man.
Awesome. Thanks, Anthony. Love 7,000 feet. It's a great shop. Tons and tons of good local beta too. So if you come in and you're trying to figure out where to go, what stuff's looking like, definitely pop in the shop. All right, let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to start screen sharing here, and I'm going to share this guy. All right, so I'm going to be looking at a different, well, let's see if I can drag and drop. Not familiar with this setup, so yeah, there we go. Okay. All right. Turn off a few things.
On the table. Do you need to go wash your hands?
Okay. Yeah, and just as a good reminder, if you're not asking questions, if you could just drop mute on so that we keep things a little bit cleaner for the recording. That always helps. Okay, cool. All right, so on this map, let's go to Google Maps real quick. Oh, I'm not signed in. Damn it. All right, never mind. For those joining late, I'm using my wife's laptop unexpectedly because my hard drive literally blue bricked my screen. So I don't have much stuff set up here properly. But this is the course. So normally I'd be bouncing back and forth between like Google, because that's kind of what we're familiar with using for maps. But just to bracket where we are right now, this northern part of the town is Buena Vista. Sorry, map is Buena Vista. And down here in the southern part, this is Salida. So you can see that the course kind of runs just about between the two, right here to right here. So this is where most of you are probably going to be staying, whether you're, lodging. There are plenty of Airbnbs around. So another popular spot is right here. Oh God, right here by the start. And this is like often called Nathrop. It's where the Mount Princeton Hot Springs are. So the race begins in this field. I have to use a different satellite image than I'm used to, but we got this big old field that we rent from the state of Colorado. This is where the race is all hubbed out of. So bunch of parking, camping, finish line stuff. You're going to leave the field and immediately get on some pavement, and you're going to run this big switchback called Swear Hill. It's only Swear Hill on the way back though. But you're going to love the views coming down this. It's really fun. And you'll go past the hot springs, which again doesn't matter except on the way back. And on the way back, it's really insulting that everybody's there relaxing while you're still suffering. But you follow along this pretty important county road called Chalk Creek Drive, and then you pull off onto this gravel road, and you cross the creek, and you're on this little railroad grade, and then you pick up the CT right here at 3 3/4 miles in. So at this point, the single track picks up, and it's a solid, punchy 800-foot climb. That's a good wake up. Definitely conga lines in there these days, but it's not too bad because it's pretty short and it's very steep. So most people are walking anyways. And then once you get to the top of that, there's a flowy kind of 3 and some miles section of really nice Colorado Trail to Raspberry. And this is your first aid station that you hit. Most people blow through this pretty quickly because it's so early in the race. Main thing to note here is that your next aid station section is about 10 miles away. So you do want to make sure to load up on fuel, fluids, before you go. There's also a porta-john. It's a couple hundred yards from the aid station just because of access with 4-wheel drive, but it's a good place if you need to use the bathroom. It's your last restroom for quite a while, so use it. Once you leave Raspberry, it's more of the same. It's this really nice flowy ponderosa forest that you're moving through. You get these little brief switchbacks, and at this point, this is where the climbing starts for the next 5,000 vertical feet. So you're going to be climbing from here all the way to 13,100 feet. Initially, the climbing's pretty chill, certainly by what's ahead of you. And then you hit this junction, and this is the end of the lollipop stem. So from here, you're entering the loop, right? This is an out, and this is out, and then you come back this way at the very end. But here, we're going to turn up, and we're going to go up this Little Browns Canyon. One key distinction here is that in the infinite wisdom of the people who named this area, they named this canyon Little Browns, and the canyon below it is named Browns, which isn't confusing ever. If you come out here and train, make sure you're training on Little Browns, not Browns. I mean, they're both phenomenal, and they actually do a really nice loop, but for us, we go up Little Browns. And this is one of my favorite parts of the whole course. It's a stunning, really narrow piece of single track, beautiful views. Some punchy climbs, but generally it's a pretty consistent grade. If you're super fit and acclimated, you'll be able to run a lot of that if you want to. A lot of people are hiking this, obviously. In the last couple of years, just with how warm it's been and guessing how warm it's going to be this year, this can get really hot. So just bear that in mind, that it can start to cook your way sooner than you expect. So again, fluids, you're running along a creek most of the whole way here. So it's a really good place to filter. I don't know why this mouse zooms 3 times for each click, but that's going to prove to be annoying. So anyways, really, really fun section. You hit this big plateau that we just call the saddle. And this is where the single track ends and you hit some mining roads. Up here is really, really, really pretty. If you've seen photos from the race and it's early on and people are smiling, there's a good chance it was from here. At this Skyline comm station, this is the high point of the race. This is at 13,100 feet right here. We do have a comms person there just checking bibs, but otherwise you got to go all the way down these switchbacks to get to the Antero aid station. And the switchbacks are, again, super awesome, really fun running. God, everybody's joining. There we go. All right, so as soon as you hit tree line, basically hit Antero 8. And this road, just as a heads up, it's nicer at the top and it's garbage at the bottom. Don't ask me how that happened. As you go lower, it gets worse and worse and worse. So the upper section is really nice. You start to hit cobbles. A lot of people call them baby heads because they're kind of that size of like a doll's head. Boulder, they're kind of nasty. Once you go through Antero, you're just following this mining road. It's called the Baldwin Gulch Road or the Antero Road, depending on who you speak to. There's a really, really nice creek crossing right here at this road junction. Great spot to douse and filter. Otherwise, this gets hot. It's north facing, but it gets a lot of solar and it tends to radiate a lot of heat. So you tend to get kind of cooked through here, but it's downhill. You're going to reach the same road you started on. So this is, again, the Chalk Creek Drive. It's just further up the canyon. You do a little dog leg here, and this is where the Baldwin Comms station is. And again, for those of you who are doing your homework, that's one of the release points for getting to Cottonwood for crews. So you have to clear this aid station. Most people have to clear this aid station before crews can go to Cottonwood. So that's what that is. It's not an aid station, just a comms checkpoint. And you're going to go through a really cute town of Alpine around this really gorgeous lake, and then you're going to run the side road all the way to St. Elmo, which is the least ghost town. It's full of people constantly, but it's really, really cute. Just as a heads up, this section is brutally hot and dusty if it's not cloud covering. So this is really, really warm. So just as a heads up, everybody kind of looks at that and thinks, oh, it's super flat and chill. It can kick your ass if you're not careful. The aid station is just past the town. So you're actually going to run through St. Elmo, and you're going to turn into this trailhead called the Poplar Gulch Trailhead. And that's where the St. Elmo aid station is. And this is one that you hit twice because you're on now this out and back up Laws Pass. The St. Elmo side of the pass is much nicer in terms of gradient than the other side, which is the Cottonwood side. There's an initial climb, but then you get in these really pretty meadows. You can kind of see them here. There are these white sections. A lot of good shade in this section, which can help a lot. There's also water, but you just kind of run this really nice gradient. And at the very, very end, you get this fairly moderate climb up to the top of Laws Pass. You're not really above tree line very far. It's like 280, I want to say, is Laws, or 250, somewhere in that range. And then you're immediately going to bomb down it. And really quickly, you're back in tree cover. And this section is about a mile shorter with the same amount of berm. So it just condenses everything up and down. You're going to hit Cottonwood, and this is the first place that you can see crews. This is a shuttled aid station for crews. And it's also metered. We get into that more when we do our specific meeting for crews pacers, but all this information is available online right now. If you go to the crew and pacer section, this is where crews have to park, and then a four-wheel drive club shuttles people up in Jeeps and trucks and everything to get to the aid station proper. You are limited to 2 people at this aid station, and it is a $20 donation to that club for their efforts to get you up to the aid station. And you can't go to that aid station until the runner has cleared a certain checkpoint. We'll talk about that later if people have questions. Otherwise, it's all written out on the website. Anyways, Cottonwood's just a dandy spot. It's a beautiful little meadow right on the creek. It's a great vibes, and it's a really good 50K mark basically into the race. So at this point, a lot of people start to, feel the effects of a lot of altitude and vert already, but you have to turn around and go back up the steep side. So you go up and over Laws again, back to San Elmo. And from there, you have a really short section between St. Elmo and Tin Cup Aid Station. So about 3 miles. It's a Forest Service road. It's pretty popular. And if you're there, I would say in before dinner, it's pretty dusty, unfortunately, just with the Jeeps driving up and down the road. But it's a wide road. You can easily get over. Most people are really respectful. There's some places to douse and filter water if you need it. But otherwise, it's just kind of this douche grade all the way to the Tin Cup. And then at Tin Cup, you'll be met by a bunch of unicorns, which are volunteers in unicorn costumes. Lots of energy. It's a phenomenal aid station. It doesn't offer all the hot foods. It's what we call a basic one. So they're going to do mostly just like prepackaged nutritions, drinks, that kind of stuff. Once you leave them, you're immediately on single track. And from this point to just past Monarch Pass, you're essentially on the Continental Divide for almost the entire stretch, kind of like trail, I should say. There's a few portions where you're not on single track, but by and large, this is single track for the next probably 27 miles. So it's really, really awesome. The section from Tin Cup to Hancock, if you look at it on this map, green roughly equates to tree line. It's not bulletproof, but it's close enough. And you can just see how long you're above tree line in this white section. It's just this really extended period of time before you drop back into timber. This is one of the coolest places on the course. If you're talking about where you're high on Lonesome, this is it. It's also where a lot of dreams go to die, because it looks really easy on the profiles, but it is really, really hard running. Any sins you've made before this in terms of bad nutrition or bad hydration or blisters or whatever, this is where they come to haunt you. So don't underestimate this section, but it's also probably the prettiest place you could pick to be a little suffering. So don't sweat it too hard. After you leave tree line, you will get on an old railroad grade. This is the old railroad tunnel that used to go underneath the divide. And you pick up a really cruiser section of kind of double track or 2 track, and you run that all the way into the aid station. It's a really nice 4% gradient. It's cruiser. It's a nice respite before you hit Hancock. And Hancock is the 50-mile mark. It's 49 technically, but this is where you also get to see crews again. And this is where you can pick up your first pacer. Hancock parking is horrible, and it's really, really challenging. We have a full team of people that are just parking. It's metered access as of last year, so you can't go there whenever. You can only go there once your runner reaches a certain time point. You're limited to 1 vehicle at all 8 stations, but you don't have a person limit here like you do at Cottonwood. So Cottonwood, you only have 2 crew. Here you can have however many crew will fit in a single vehicle. There's also no fee to get to this one. You just have to have a dedicated parking pass, which you get when the runner clears that checkpoint. Again, we'll cover this in more detail, usually in like late May, early June, when we do a crew specific meeting for this. But all this information is on the website right now. You can look at it on your own time. Hancock is awesome. This is one of my favorite spots in the race. It's stunning. It's also just raw suffering usually here. This is just like you're in the teeth of it. So it's a really cool, inspiring spot, but you also just have to push through. And when you leave it, you can have a pacer. There is a gear check at this point. And I'm sorry, I should mention one quick thing. At Cottonwood, you're required to pick up your divide gear, which is super annoying when it's really, really hot. But if we have any thunderstorms, you'll definitely be using this gear for a long time. But you have to pick up your additional divide gear here at Cottonwood. It's checked again at the Hancock aid station, as well as your pacer's gear. So make sure you've got all that stuff. This is nighttime for most people, for what it's worth. Like probably back 2/3 of the race, if not 3/4 of the race. This is where you're putting on lamps, you're changing gear, you're getting ready for your nighttime. So it's a good spot just to reset. When you leave it, you've got this really nasty, cobbly forest road for a mile, and then you pick up a single track right before the lake. And this is one of the prettiest spots of the whole course. I say that a lot, but I mean it. If you can see this in daylight, that's awesome. If not, get up here for a training run or scouting run if you can. It's just so pretty in the daylight. You have a really, really short climb over Chalk Creek Pass that is not hard. You know, it'll smoke you if you're puking or something, but otherwise it goes by pretty fast. On the other side of it is one of the better downhill stretches of the race. And this is, for whatever reason, this basin just gets a ton of moisture. And the ground is actually softer, like physically softer. It's like Pacific Northwest vibes with how cushiony it can be. Not everywhere, but a lot of sections. So it's a good spot if you're feeling good to just kind of get into the right gear and cruise. There's a few kind of boggy sections that in a normal year might be an issue, but I think in how dry we are right now, this might not actually be very boggy. But just as a heads up, you can often get your feet wet in this section. One place I just want to show you guys on the satellite, because this is a really helpful landmark. As you're coming into Lost Wonder, you get these huge talus fields. Talus is boulders that are like microwave sized. And you see you cross through a few small ones, but you hit this absolutely enormous one. And you hit this right before you hit the out and back to the aid station. So this is a really good, just like, oh my God, why am I in a boulder field? Oh, I'm almost to Lost Wonder Hut. So just remember that if you need inspiration there. We have a volunteer group that sits right here, and make sure you turn up and go to Lost Wonder Hut. This is one of the coolest aid stations because it's a backcountry ski hut that we rent just for the race. Super cute, very small. They do backcountry pizzas there, which I think is really fun. But it's a 1/3 of a mile on this out and back. So 1/3 in, 1/3 back out. And then you pick back up on the single track shortly after you leave the aid station. So it's a road, which is actually really nice to have a little bit of a break. You have this road section that's all descending until you get to right here. And then right here, you pick back up on single track. This used to be way steeper. They rerouted it a few years ago where the single track has more switchbacks. So it's not as steep, but it's still about 1,000 feet kind of in climbing to get to Boss Lake. And then the climbing from here is relatively gradual, but this just, I mean, I'm, you know, almost 60-mile legs, nothing feels good, right? So this just hurts. Right as you hit tree line, you hit the head wall, which is the final big climb before you hit the CDT. And the head wall is, unless you're in like the top 5, this is all dark. No one sees this in daylight. The head wall has the really cool effect of looking way bigger and way taller when there's headlamps on it. And you'll look up and you'll be like, good God, I have to go up that. It's not really that much further, but it just looks really, really big. So don't lose heart, punch through it. And then you hit the, this is called the ridge. There's no name for it, but it's the section that gave the race its name. You're just running on really awesome single track all the way along this ridge for quite a few miles, and you're going to hit the Purgatory aid station. And just as a heads up, Purgatory is still not in its final resting place. reason for that is because Monarch has been expanding into the backside, which is called the no name basin, and they've had to move our aid station the last couple of years because of construction, and we haven't had a chance to go up there this year and actually locate it. But it'll either be right here, which is where it used to be for many years, or it'll be about a mile further down. Somewhere in between that range will be what it is. We want it as close to Lost Wonder as we can, because there's very few miles between Purgatory to Monarch anyways. So if it's closer to Monarch, it just does less. But once you hit the ski area, you're on cat roads, you know, little maintenance roads that they have up there, until you cross Old Monarch Pass, and then you get on some single track and drop into Monarch Pass proper. Monarch is another crew accessible aid station. It's on a highway. It's a very busy highway. We've got people monitoring your crossing. It's where crews can get to. Oh, look, the satellite's got snow on it. All right, just imagine, oh, there it goes, that one. Now it doesn't have snow. You can see there's tons and tons of parking. It's a really busy aid station, but there's so much space, it just doesn't feel as busy because it's not nearly as cramped. This one has no restrictions for metering. It's still the one vehicle restriction for crews, but you can swap pacers here. If you have AT&T and Verizon, no, Verizon doesn't have service, but everybody else does have service here. So, you know, you can squat here as a crew for a while in relative comfort, so long as the wind isn't terrible or the weather hasn't blown in. This is a really high aid station. It's just below tree line, so it does get nuked with weather. Monarch represents the last big mountain section that you have in the race. And a lot of people look at Monarch as like, okay, the race is kind of, I've got it in the bag. I'm at Monarch. It's understandable. I kind of do that too, but I'd encourage you to really think about Fooses as actually ending the mountain section. And the reason for that is you have this huge descent, leaving Monarch, going all the way down, say, and slip and slide and down this into Fooses. When you get to Fooses, your vert and descent have matched. You don't have anything in the bank at this point. At Monarch, you still have 2,000 some descending in the bank. So Fooses is kind of the like, everything is now ahead of you is homogeneously CT, and behind you is kind of all the mountain stuff. So the other thing here is that it's way easier to eat at 9,000 feet of elevation than it is at 12,000 feet. And so a lot of people get to Monarch and they try to do a lot of food, which is, you know, great. You want to be eating, but oftentimes it's a lot easier to put down a lot of food at Fooses rather than trying to eat up a tree line. So just a thought. Once you hit Fooses, you're on the Colorado Trail all the way home, literally to the finish line. And it is very hot. It's all single track though, but it's all really hot. And you leave Fooses and you cross the highway. We have, again, marshals here to help you cross, and you pick up single track. And this got dubbed the Hill of Broken Dreams 5 or 6 years ago, because this is where everybody who is shooting for a time goal realizes it's dead. It's not going to happen. And that's just because when you look at the race, everybody looks at the first 60, 70 miles and like, oh, look at all the mountains, look at all the vert, look at how technical and elevation it is, and how high it is. And they forget that they still have to run a 50K to the finish line from Fooses. And there's a lot of vert, and it's dusty, and it's hot, and it's rolly. It just gets wild. So anyways, it's not really much of a hill. But once you get up on it, you have a nice kind of cruiser section before you do a short climb and descent into the Chavano aid station. And it's similar to Tin Cup in its simplicity. It's a very basic aid station. It's only here just to make sure people aren't dropping in this campground, which used to be a problem in the past. People would try to drop here, and we had to call search and rescue, or almost had to call search and rescue. So now we have an aid station there. So if something happens, we can support you, and you don't have to wing it. Otherwise, it's like 2 miles from here to Blanks. So Chavano is another just kind of like blow through aid station. You don't even really need to fill up your water because you're literally going 2 miles. Like, so fill up a bottle at most, grab some Coke, douse yourself in the creek, and just get to Blanks. And the reason you want to get to Blanks is because that's another crew accessible aid station. And this is the if you're chasing cutoffs, this is the crux. You got to get through blanks and raspberry really, really solidly, because the section from blanks to raspberry is 10 miles. It's one of the 3 10-mile sections without 8. It's also like mile 80 to 90 something. So I think it's like 82 to 93. And and if you're running in the back of the pack, it's smoking hot. So get to blanks, do everything you can, get back out on the trail. And even if you're not at the back of the pack, this section just blows. It'll cook you, kill you, crush you, whatever you have, it takes. And there's a few creeks, but it's pretty consistent in just contouring along the face of the Sawatch. And you get back to this spot right here, which is where you turn 90 miles ago to go see the rest of the race. And instead you stay straight and go back to Raspberry. This is Raspberry 2. You can have crews at Raspberry 2. They can't be here the first time around at mile 7, but they can be here at 93. And then look, if you get to Raspberry and you get here under cutoffs, you got it. This is where you can say you got it in the bag. It's super generous cutoff to get from Raspberry to the finish. I shouldn't say super generous. It's just way better than what you had to get from blanks to Raspberry. That's a tight one. But from Raspberry to the finish, it's much more reliable. Most of it's downhill, and you've got your big last descent, which is that same one you punched up at the very beginning. And right here where the CT ends, this is your last single track of the race. This is where you're allowed multiple pacers. There's no aid station here. It's just like a 3-car parking space, but you can add multiple pacers here. They must have all the required gear. They must have pacer bibs. They must have signed the waivers. This doesn't mean you just get to pitch out and do whatever you want. This is still, there's a lot of traffic on this road when you come back. And so we do that for added safety. It's also a chance just for like folks that don't really want to run, but want to participate with your journey. You can have a moment, but they got to have all their gear and shit here. So if they're jumping in here and they've never done it anywhere else, meaning they need a bib and they need the gear checked, do it at Raspberry. Okay, you can't do it at the finish line. You got to do it at Raspberry as your last shot. So just do it there. If you don't have people or your people are all set, either way, it's a super simple run all the way to the hot springs, and then you have Swear Hill, which is this nasty piece of paved switchback that just goes up. And while you're in your final hours of suffering, all these people who had the bright idea to come here as well, but not run 100-miler, and they're soaking in their hot springs and drinking pina coladas, they look at you and wonder why. You can share that question with them, and then you get right to the entrance to the field and you got it done. You pop into the field and you run back and cross the finish line. The cutoff for the race is 37 hours, which is definitely doable. We have a 70% finisher rate. It's definitely a tight cutoff though. You have to be running some parts of the race. It is not a hikeable race. If you can run the downs and you hike the climbs, most people who do that finish before the cutoff. It's also a pretty accessible race in terms of how many crew access points there are, but you definitely don't need a crew. You can do this for the first time, or if you've done hundreds before, it can be done without crews. There's phenomenal aid stations and great volunteers. So all in all, it's a really good first time race, and it's a really good 1,000 miler or something like that, where you've done a bunch. But that is the course. If you want to look at I don't know if it'll let me do this. Let me change tabs. There's a bunch of info on the website, of course, which will show you, and this is in the runner's guide too, but you've got all the breakdowns of mileage, the distance, what type it is, cutoffs, drop bags, etc. In the runner's guide, there's an equivalent table that actually shows elevation gain and descent between each segment as well. I like data, so we have lots of ways you can see this. And then down here, we've got some downloadable and some other links. So there's the course GPX and KML files, written turn by turn if you're one of the old schoolers that wants it printed, 8.5 by 11. And then there's a full course map here, which is actually a PDF. It's not the the link I was just using in Caltopo, that's actually like a print version of that same map. So if you want to print it out, you can do so there. And then there's this Aventa link. I'll cover this more later, but this is an app that you can have on your phone that'll show you where you are in real time. Definitely recommend doing it, but we'll talk more about that later. And then there's some kind of just written descriptors down here. If you want to read what I wrote about 10 years ago, you can do so. And there's the elevation profile for you. So let me stop sharing. We got a few minutes here, so let's do specific course-related questions for the next like 5 minutes or so. So nothing that's not related to the course, but anything that you didn't hear me talk about, this is a good time to give me a question. So I'll be looking at the chat, but if you want to just come off of mute and ask it, that works too. Megan asks, are there a lot of talus fields? No, not really. The trail is fairly consistently rocky through many segments, but there's not really any like talus. And even the talus field by Lost Wonder Hut's not, it's a really nice trail through it. They did a lot of work to make it fairly reasonable for what it is.
Hey, Caleb, quick question. The last Swear Hill, people do not need all the gear to pace you up?
No, so Swear Hill, you still have to have all the gear. It's a good question though. Thanks, John. When you leave pavement and turn into the field, so once you're off the road, which is I think the last like 2/3 of a mile, anybody can pace you. No gear required, no waivers required, no age restrictions. Just like mob it, however many people you want. Once you're in the field, you're safe, right? There's no waiver cars to hit you. So, but yeah, you can mob it from there, but they do need to have the gear if they're going up Swear Hill.
Thanks.
Yep, good questions.
Hey, Caleb, it's Randy Szymanski. Question about the divide gear. We pick it up at Cottonwood. Is there a point later in the race where we can then leave it with crew, or do we have to carry it all the way to the finish?
Yep, another good question, Randy. Thank you. You can drop divide gear at Monarch. So you still have to carry your base gear. We'll cover this in a little bit more detail, but the short version is you can drop it at Monarch and you carry your base gear with you for all 100 miles. So you'll have that with you for the rest of it, but that extra gear is just Cottonwood to Monarch. Question in the chat from Zachary. Thoughts on having a pacer for this course versus going at it alone? That's a good question, Zach, for when we get to the Q&A. I'd say save it for there. I'd only offer that the aid station spacing and the course markings both make it a very doable race for someone going pacerless and crewless. Megan asks, is it possible for a pacer to check in at Raspberry then drive the 3.75 and meet them there? I mean, unless you're running course record pace, yes, it should be relatively easy. It's probably a 15-minute drive to get to that from one to the other. So don't really need to get too crazy. Tatum's asking about using polls. Another good one to save for the Q&A there, Tatum. Definitely a mixed bag, lots of personal preference in there. I'd say the majority of people at the race these days are using polls for something, or at least some segment, but I'm personally not really a poll guy. I think there's not really enough steep stuff here to merit a ton of polls unless you're just like, that's your jam and you really know how to use them. But those are fighting words for the poll camp probably than the non-polls. But good questions so far. We got 4 more minutes before we're going to move over to talking about nutrition with our Maurten team. Any other questions about the course?
You mentioned water. Oops, sorry.
No, go ahead. I'll go after you.
Okay. Thanks. You mentioned water filtration a few times. If you're kind of towards the front of the pack, how important is like a water filter, do you think, between the aid stations?
Well, we have, so just to make sure this is not misleading anybody, we have enough water for everybody at all the aid stations. So we don't dry out at the aid stations, but you can carry a lot less water weight if you carry a water filter. So I usually talk about this in the gear section, but this is a good spot to mention it. But there is, in a normal year, and I'll preface that by saying this is not a normal year, but in a normal year, there is ample water most of the course. It starts to dry up at Fooses, and Fooses are the finish line. You got to be more strategic. But I mean, Hancock section, there's just, you're crossing little rivulets and runnels constantly. So filtering water, I think, is a really effective way to carry less weight and drink colder water. I think it's a really great tool too for just like managing heat, because if you stop to filter, you'll douse a little bit, which is really helpful, especially if you're running in the front of the pack, where you're running, you know, in the hotter sections of the day, you're moving at maybe a higher effort level. So definitely don't need it, but definitely suggest, I would never run high Lonesome without a filter ever if it were me. And I hate carrying shit, so that's part of the reason.
Do you think any of that is going to dry up this year? Sorry, I'm from Arizona, so I'm like, water? Do you guys have water?
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, some of it will be dry. I've thought about making a map many years about doing, like, actually showing course or street, like, water filtration points on the course. The reason I've never done it is because there are a lot that are pretty seasonal. There's definitely perennials. So if you look at a map and something's coming out from a lake, there's a good chance that water is going to be there year round, even with this dry of a summer. We're looking mostly at, like, the normal watersheds will be much smaller. The seasonals that are still melting, like that active snow melt, typically that's percolating through the soil or still running off of snowfields, that typically would go through August. This year will probably be done by July. So it's a little hard to know what that would look like, but there'll still be enough to filter. It just might not be like every mile. And unfortunately, it makes it hard, you know, from a planning perspective, to be like, oh, I know exactly what I'm going to be doing for this section, unless you've had a chance to scout it. So still worth carrying it, but, you know, without proper beta, it could be harder to use this year. Real quick before Colton jumps in, Jessica asked about creek crossings. I'll be honest, this sock changes are I think a waste of time at higher level a lot, because it's so seasonal. This year, with it being super dry, it probably will work better. But in a lot of years, people change their socks at Hancock and then they run through the bog at Hancock Lake and their feet are smoked again. So the only one that you might have to get your feet wet is the one coming off of Antero. But there's big boulders that you can hop, so you don't really have to get your feet wet there. I don't think this year it'll be an issue anywhere else than that. So I would expect dry feet. A lot of the boggy sections will probably be dry too, you know, which tends to be around the Hancock Lake to Lost Wonder section. So it should be pretty dry. But Colton, you had a question for us.
Yeah, thanks. I guess going back to like the required gear and stuff like that, competition, I guess the question is more along like, what are most people doing? It sounds like they are either sending it with their crew to Cottonwood or putting it in a drop bag. Is that correct? As opposed to like carrying it with them? More of the question is like, yeah, is that what people are doing? Obviously anything can happen, like your crew doesn't show up or the drop bag doesn't get there, right? But I guess I'm just trying to understand, because I also don't want to lug it around, right? So yeah.
Right. You're talking about specifically the extra gear, the divide gear that you have to pick up at Cottonwood.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
What was last year? 55% of people sent crews to Cottonwood. The rest ran drop bags. I think last year I had one lost drop bag, and it was not at Cottonwood. If we lose a drop bag of yours, there's enough gear there that will fill you in so that you can get out and keep moving, and then pick up whatever you actually want, hopefully at like Hancock. So there's not gonna be a scenario where if it's our fault, you're gonna get penalized for that. There's obviously the unnecessary stress of like that whole scenario of just being like, where's my bag, and trying to get help for it. But that's pretty uncommon. It's about one bag a year we misplace. Some years it's not us, some years it's us. If you want to avoid, it's tough because Cottonwood's annoying in a lot of ways because it has more like touch points to do, but it's actually a less stressful crew experience than Hancock. Hancock is super bitchy for parking. You might end up having to walk a mile from your parking spot to get to the aid station, or you might walk 300 yards. So some people don't always want to send someone to Hancock, but if you're running with a pacer and you're planning on starting in Hancock, like you kind of have to do that. So for what it's worth, I would say if you don't want your crew to go to Cottonwood, drop bags are a great alternative.
Thanks.
Cool. Okay. Bill and Lauren, do you guys want to jump off of mute and give us a little introduction about you guys and background with Hilo and Maurten?
Sure thing, Caleb. Thank you. Hey, everyone. My name is Bill Dittman. I work for Maurten. I'm also a Hilo finisher. So I came to the race for the first time as a participant and have been back in the years since helping on the fuel side of things. So I'll be there again this year. And in just a moment, I'll go over what Maurten products you'll find on course. But first, I want to allow Lauren to introduce herself.
Thanks, Bill. Hey, everybody. I'm Lauren, performance dietitian for Maurten in the US. So sports dietitian by trade. Just super excited to kind of talk you through a little bit of the background of the product so you know what you'll have available and feel comfortable with it.
Great. So yeah, we're going to break this into two sections. I'll talk about what you're going to see on course and how it's going to be presented. And then when it comes to all the sports science related topics, whether it's how to use Maurten products as well as how to put together a fueling strategy, Lauren will cover that, and we would welcome any questions at the end. So at Hilo this year, we are going to see a full assortment of fuels, and we're going to be offering those fuels in three different varieties, we'll call it. So we're going to have our drink mix 160. That'll be mixed up at all the aid stations, so you'll be able to pour it right out of a 5-gallon jug. The drink mix 160 has 40 grams of carbohydrates per 500 milliliters, which is 17 ounces. And it has 160 calories per serving. So it is unflavored, so it'll be kind of neutral in flavor, but no flavors to have to contend with. And then we will also be offering our gels. We're going to offer the gels in three different types. So we're going to have our gel 100. It's going to come in a black package, and that is going to be 100 calories, 25 grams of carbohydrates. And just for your reference, anything in a black package is going to be uncaffeinated. So no caffeine in these black gels. We're also going to be offering that the Gel 100 Calf 100. So this is going to have that 100 calories, 25 grams of carbohydrates. It's also going to have 100 milligrams of caffeine. 100 milligrams of caffeine is a good strong cup of coffee. So we just recommend utilize these and go into your race with a caffeine strategy. We definitely don't want you to just be ripping off caffeinated gels for the entire race. Unless that's part of your strategy, then Godspeed. But then our final gel that we offer is our Gel 160. It's going to be just a little bit larger than our Gel 100. There's going to be 160 calories in here and 40 grams of carbohydrates, no caffeine. So if you're trying to maybe reduce your cadence or you're trying to go maybe a little bit higher hourly grams of carbs, maybe you want to take in the larger gel. Otherwise, we also have the smaller gel. And all of these will be offered as well at the aid stations. And then the final piece that we're going to be offering is going to be our solid 160, which is an oat and rice-based bar. It's going to taste like a compressed Rice Krispie treat, kind of is the taste of it. But what's nice about it is it gives you 160 calories and 40 grams of carbohydrates. It's tasty, but it's also low fat, low fiber, low protein. And so it's very easily digestible. You don't have to worry about like a high fiber content bar. This is going to be truly like a chewable fuel. It can kind of help break up some of the flavor and palate fatigue that we get from a bunch of gels and drink mixes. And the final piece, and I'm sure Lauren's going to touch on it, is just to say there's amazing real food options at High Lonesome. It's one of the real features of this race, in my opinion. Utilize those real food options. We kind of consider as the sports fuel that'll get you between the two aid stations, but use those aid stations for what they can offer.
Awesome. Thanks, Bill. If it works, I can jump into sharing a couple slides. Give me 1 second.
We've always failed at this in the last 2 years. I'm so
I have a
hopeful.
good I have a good feeling we're gonna try.
Yes.
Hooray.
All right.
Can you see that?
Yes.
Can.
Okay, we're golden. I can't see you, so just tell me if anything happens. I wanted to take a couple minutes to talk about the background of Maurten to understand why it's a bit more unique than a lot of the other sports nutrition products, and how it works in your body, and how you can maybe use that as you're putting together your fueling plan. A little bit of background here, no shocker, carbohydrates are queen and king for endurance. And we want to make sure that you, as you start to train, recognize the need of these carbohydrates during training, right? I'm not going to go through all this, but just as a sports dietitian, like recognizing the high volume of carbohydrates to fuel your training and, kind of keep you healthy, keep you recovering, and make sure that you are as healthy as can be come race day. That's really hard to accomplish just from real food. So sports nutrition comes in to just help support these needs. Now, the question being, there's all these really high amounts of carbohydrates that are seen in the literature as being helpful for endurance exercise. However, a lot of athletes have trouble digesting those really high amounts, even though we know that it can correlate to better results. So, essentially what Maurten is doing here is using something called hydrogel technology. So a quick refresher, if you're not familiar, basically what hydrogel does is it acts like a sponge, which transports the carbohydrates through your stomach very quickly, and then lets them get into the intestine and then reach the bloodstream from there. So essentially, we're bypassing the stomach to really help how quickly the carbohydrates go through your body, and how, kind of the minimal stress on the stomach to then be able to make sure that you can tolerate higher amounts of carbohydrates. So that transport sponge-like system is created by adding 2 fibers that are found in nature. One fiber is called pectin, and one is called alginate, from something in apples and something in seaweed. So nothing crazy here. It's actually, hydrogel is used in the medical world, in pharmaceuticals, to make sure patients in hospitals can get drugs delivered when they don't have working stomachs. So this technology has been around for a really long time. And all we did was put carbohydrates in there instead of medicine. So as I said, we get a faster gastric emptying, which is what you want when you're exercising. We don't want food to necessarily sit in your stomach for a really long period of time. Not only are you not getting the energy quick, but it can cause some GI distress. Extra bonus of Maurten, that it also is pH sensitive, and we specifically put our drink mix and our gels at a pH that will protect the dental enamel. So it's above the acidic level that could be, kind of hurting that dental enamel and dental health. So little side there. As Bill mentioned, there's no colors, preservatives, only what's going to help the athlete will be in the products that you see. So the Drink Mix 160, which Bill mentioned, will be on course. Just wanted to show in a little bit more detail what makes this a bit more unique than a normal sports drink. As I said, those gelling ingredients are going to be added to the sports drink. And then what happens is when that sports drink, the carbohydrates hit your stomach acid, it's going to turn into a semi-solid. So you're not going to get the sloshing of fluid that you might get if you're taking a more typical, carbohydrate-based drink. So we have this, semi-solid hydrogel in the stomach. And then when the pH changes, when it hits your intestine, the obviously the stomach's gonna be a lot more acidic than your intestine. That is going to dissolve and then be able to deliver those carbohydrates quickly to the bloodstream. So just a little bit of kind of breakdown of how it's actually working in the body. And, the idea being this will help you kind of tolerate a little bit more carbohydrate consistently throughout the whole race. This is just an example of what that looks like. If we were to simulate that gastric acid, that really, low pH, it's not going to be a water. It's going to be a semi-solid kind of, again, structure there that is quite unique. So you'll have that 160 available at the aid stations. That's going to be this over here. If you happen to see the sachets, we also do have a drink mix 320, which is 80 grams of carbohydrate in that 500 mils or about 16, 17 ounces. So as you're training and you're playing around with getting to the calories that you're aiming for, the carbohydrates that you're aiming for, just another way to do that. Obviously going to be a bit more concentrated, it's giving you double the amount of carbohydrates there. Again, any white packaging is going to have that 100 milligrams of caffeine. So if you're, instead of taking a caffeine gel, if you're looking to, work in a drink mix that is caffeinated, that would be the option from our end. The gels, all three of these will be available. Bill already nailed this, so I'm not going to hit it too much. But again, 25 grams of carbohydrates in each gel, different type of texture. The first ingredient is water. So a good thing to remember is actually each gel is about 40% water, that you don't necessarily, it's not going to be that syrupy consistency as many other gels are. So the need for like washing down lots of water with it doesn't necessarily come. So a little bit more flexibility perhaps with how and when you want to use those gels as you're putting together your fueling plan. So again, we had that caffeinated gel option in there. Just a quick note on caffeine. It is a performance enhancing supplement. We do know it can enhance performance. However, there is a sweet spot, and we want to make sure you're being intentional about the timing and the dosing of that. Caffeine generally takes about 30 to 60 minutes to peak in your bloodstream, and then can stay elevated for quite some time, 4, 5, 6, 7 hours even after. So how can we use caffeine to your advantage to time that during parts of the race that are going to be, the most that you could really benefit from them the most, right? So start to think about that and how you want to integrate that in, if it's a tool in the toolbox that you want to use. And lastly, again, these are the solids that Bill was speaking about. You'll have access to these. Great option for a chewable fuel, right? Again, as Bill mentioned, the goal is not to survive just on sports nutrition for this whole time you're on your feet. The goal is to make sure you're getting adequate baseline of carbohydrates and then get in appropriate, fuel from other sources as well. So this is nice just to get a flavor reset from kind of the chocolate solid C flavor, or just be able to actually chew something when you've just been drinking and taking gels for a while. And then just a quick note to think about logistics, right? We've come out with a couple of options in terms of how to carry your fuel. Obviously, there's tons of options out there. Just to get you thinking of it now, though, we do have a gel flask that holds 5 of the gel 100. So you're getting 125 grams in one kind of handheld, or one that could fit in your pocket. The drink flask, again, an option to fill one of the drink mix sachets in there. And then recently there's now a Sky flask that holds both a drink mix and a gel. So just lots of options as you start to think about both training and racing, ways to make sure you're carrying your fuel in a way that feels doable to you. On the Maurten website, you'll see lots of fuel guides that have been made by the nutrition team. Just wanted to highlight that to check it out for later. It will also include a little note about preloading and pre-race. So we don't want you to ignore leading into these long runs that you're doing training-wise, as well as, of course, race day. Again, an opportunity to combine regular, whole foods that you eat on a normal daily basis, plus supplement with a little bit of really easy to digest carbohydrate sources. I added in just a quick note about, how do we get our guts used to taking in calories when we're running, right? Especially for a long period of time with a lot of climbing, with a lot of altitude, right? All of these different environmental changes that could happen. Some tips here. This is from My Sports Science. So I highly recommend if you're looking for, just learning more and kind of working on training your gut. The big thing I can tell you now is that not only training with more carbohydrate during your session training sessions will help, but eating a little bit closer to when you go out on a run can also help, as well as your overall carbohydrate content of your diet. So start to think about some of these things as you train, and again, include some foods that you might be eating at aid stations during your training just to get used to the exposure. Our body is an amazing vessel and will adapt to what you do. So, definitely recommend giving it that time to train it like a muscle. Lastly, a few quick notes here. Train your gut, I just really talked about. Practice your nutrition, train your gut just like your muscles, but try to simulate as much as you can your fueling plan during your long runs. And then think about, again, how will your fueling change at, hot conditions, cold conditions, nighttime, daytime, heat, cold, you name it. This could change the, kind of appeal of food and or sports nutrition. So having a plan A and B is always very helpful for these scenarios. Quick recap. We gotta take in carbohydrates because we can only store so much in our body, and we want to start early and often. So you want to start fueling from the very beginning of your run, very beginning of your race, before you feel like you need it. That's going to set you up for success as the race goes on. Include that real food, those great aid station offerings. That's going to get you, really the fuel that you need. What Maurten can do is help support you with adequate carbohydrates between those stations. So take the next few months, play around with it, get familiar with the Maurten product if you plan on using it on race day. And yeah, we're here to answer any questions that you might have.
Yeah, Lauren, we thank you. And we did get one question in the chat, and it was Katie who talked about being able to use gels for basically 36 hours straight, but being interested in potentially adding some solids on board, and asking, would adding a solid maybe every third or fourth hour seem like a good strategy?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's a lot of gels. So kudos to anyone who can tolerate that. But yes, I think, I like to recommend solids between every 2 to 4 hours, depending on your kind of plan and tolerance there. I will let Bill speak from a, more personal experience, but generally I do think it's nice to have that breakup about every couple hours.
Perfect. We've got another question in the chat. Will there be electrolytes on course? I'll let Caleb speak to that particular question. But before he does, I just want to say that Maurten, depending on the product, Maurten does have sodium in it. But if you're looking for, the traditional electrolyte profile, magnesium, potassium, calcium, Maurten products do not contain that what would be considered like a full electrolyte profile.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. I put this in the last email I sent to runners, so if you guys want a little bit more data there, that would be a place to look. But the short version is we would like to have a electrolyte only drink option available, but it's just challenging because a lot of brands don't feel comfortable being next to other brands. This is not a Maurten problem. This is the people we're talking to about being with us. You know, everybody offers so many options these days that it's hard to find brands that are comfortable being next to each other. So we are working on it. That is our hope. But if you want a specific electrolyte only thing, you need to be planning on bringing that yourself at the current situation, at least.
Perfect. Hannah said, is there a recommended shelf life for decanting gels into a gel flask? Is it going to get weird if I do it the night before? Definitely not. The night before, you're good. You'll be totally fine there. I wouldn't leave the gels in the gel flask for several days. But I mean, for myself personally, in all the races I've done using gel flasks, I'm doing all that work the night before anyhow. It's just one less thing to have to think about on race day, or have your crew have to think about on race day. And put those gel flasks or gels, if you have the prepackaged gels, put them in the freezer. They don't freeze, and your body temp will warm them up enough so that they won't be hard, but they can serve as little ice packs until you eat them. Any nutrition adjustment recommendations for people coming from sea level? Lauren, that's a you question. People coming from sea level.
Yeah, it's I would say big picture, general. If we have to speak generally, when you are not adapted to altitude, you might have a higher fluid loss and you might have a greater carbohydrate need than when you are at sea level. So something to think about, maybe having a little bit more carbohydrates, during these runs as you're training, kind of going over what you maybe normally would do at sea level to accompany for that additional stress that you might find on your body when you go up to altitude.
Lots of good questions. Keep at them in the chat or jumping in if you guys have more questions about Maurten products or just nutrition.
Will aid stations have other caffeine options other than the gels? On the Maurten side, it will just be the gels. But as far as aid station foods, I know that there's soda.
Yeah, there's like Coke, and some aid stations have coffee. Like Monarch often has coffee. I think Purgatory might as well. But yeah, generally from a product perspective, it's the gels, which I highly recommend those things. It's like jet fuel. All right. Last call for questions for Bill and Lauren. While you guys are working up the courage, any pickle juice? Oh man, you're trying to trigger me right now. I have a spiritual issue with pickle juice as a fad. But yes, we have pickles on course. If you want to filter out some from the jar, we serve it for you. So that's a question from Zachary. Jessica's asking about the sodium content in the drink mix. Lauren, do you want to?
Sure. It's about 250 milligrams in 16 ounces.
Good questions. So Bill's going to be at our Hancock aid station. He'll be there. I think you're pretty much there the whole time, right, Bill?
Yeah, beginning to end. I'll see everyone.
Nice. It's awesome. All righty. Well, we're going to go ahead and let Bill and Lauren jump off. But thank you guys so much for supporting the race and helping us prep ahead of time. We really appreciate everything.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, everyone. See ya.
All right. Okay. All right. So next up, we're going to go ahead and talk quickly about the required gear, since we had some chance to cover that earlier. I'm just going to screen share the website while we do this. Okay. So we've got two types of, oh, sorry. There we go. Two categories of required gear. There's your base gear, which is something you and your pacers are going to carry for the entire race, no matter where you are. And then there's an additional gear list, which is Cottonwood to Monarch, and that's just because that section can be quite dangerous and has a lot more weather variability that we're trying to ensure ourselves against. So we call the base gear, and the extra stuff is called the divide gear because you're carrying it while you're on the Continental Divide. And then lastly, there's a requirement. So all of this gear is physical gear that you're going to carry, right? The base and divide gear. But there's also one more piece of gear that you have to have that you don't actually have to carry, and that's called the Corsair card. So we covered that down here at the bottom. This is something that as a runner, you're going to show at runner check-in. And then as a pacer, you're going to show when you pick up your pacer bibs. A Corsair card stands for Colorado Search and Rescue. It's a card that contributes to a general fund that reimburses search groups for search costs. So by contributing to this, we're both supporting the groups that are going to save our asses if we get into a really unfortunate situation. And it also enables the specific search and rescue organizations to access this fund to recoup losses that they have. So in Colorado, search and rescue is free as a service. But flight for light, helicopters, that stuff costs a lot of money, and that's not covered in this. So just to be clear, this is just us being good stewards with kind of a county agency, if you will think of it that way. So you have to purchase this. You can show proof of a Corsair card in any form that you want. That can be a screenshot, can be a PDF, can be a printed out copy. Some folks like to laminate it and carry it with them. I don't care. It just has to have your name on it, and the date has to be current. And however you want to show us that is fine. So going back up to the base gear, this is something that's going to get checked several times. The first time this gear is going to get checked is at the start line. So before you actually get to leave the race, we're going to check your base gear. I highly recommend not packing all of your gear like perfectly before you come to the start line, because you just pull it all out, right? Because you have to physically show us you have it. So bring it in a bag or something, or if you're not super particular, you can have it packed, but you're going to end up setting this on a table at the start line, pulling every piece of gear out and showing it to somebody, putting it back in your bag, and you're good to go. So that gear is also going to get checked at a couple different points. It's going to get checked at Cottonwood and Hancock, and can be randomly checked at other places if we feel like we need to. Pacers will have this gear checked wherever they're picking up their pacer bib, which is typically the aid station they're going to be leaving from. So they will kind of do a similar process to the start line. They'll walk up to the table. They say, hey, I'm pacing. They'll sign a waiver, show their gear, and get a bib. So let's talk about the base gear. While it's been done a few times, the one thing that pretty much everybody in High Lonesome carries is a pack. So highly recommend having a really good pack, training with a pack. This is the Osprey Duro Pro 10, which is something that I've been using for a bit. Really love it. I've been in Osprey packs for a couple of years now, and I like the way they ride. Lots of other options. Use whatever you want. If you're in the market for something, make sure it's got plenty of room. That's the short version. Some packs just don't have the storage. Most of the storage these days is going in the back of the pack, whether it's in like kangaroo pouches, zippers, or side components. You will end up using a lot of space, especially if you're not like incredibly dialed and space conscious. So you're going to start with a good pack, and then you need to carry a whistle, emergency bivvy, and I say in there that it needs to be a Soul emergency bivvy. Soul is a brand, stands for shit out of luck, which I think is fun. They make lots of knockoffs of this bivvy. It does not need to be a Soul branded bivvy, but it must be a Soul analog, meaning that, like here, I actually brought one. I get this question so much. This is not Soul. This is an Amazon special, okay? But this is how big it looks. Here's my cell phone, right? It's very small. What makes this acceptable is the fact that it has a plastic polyurethane coating over the, see if I can show this without unraveling it. But if you look at that, you can see this orange is a plastic on top of the space blanket. And so that's really important because this is both a sleeping bag bivvy, right? So it's an actual sleeping bag shape, but it's also got that polyurethane, and that's important because that prevents it from tearing in the wind. And in most emergencies, the wind is a big issue. And thankfully, a while ago, there were an incident in China where multiple participants unfortunately perished because their space blanket shredded and they weren't able to stay warm. So that's why it has to be a bivvy, has to have that mylar or polyurethane, whichever one is fine, coating on it. Brand is whatever you find. And then you have to have a minimum of a 1.5 liter water capacity. As I noted in the website, you don't actually have to have that full, you just have to have the capacity. Capacity does have to be a specific water carrying device, so it can't be like a fucking Ziploc or some garbage like that. Bottles, bladders, that's what you need to be looking at. Whichever, both, that's just how your preferences go. An emergency light source, this is not necessarily a headlamp. It can be a headlamp, but it's literally just 10 lumens. So this is in the event that you need to signal for help in the dark, or you're trying to change batteries on your primary light. But most phones, if you're running with a phone, your phone is an adequate primary light. So, or sorry, your emergency light for your base gear is totally fine. Little keychain fobs, those, like, you know, used to use them back in 10 years ago. They were all the hype. It was like literally the size of a quarter. Those were fine. Some people carry a headlamp, which is a lot of weight, but works fine. Doesn't really matter. Whatever you feel like is the right mix of availability, cost, and size. And then you have to carry a waterproof jacket. This one gets a lot of people. So I have an example of both a permissible and a non-permissible jacket. So waterproof means it has tape seams. There is no such thing as a waterproof jacket that does not have tape seams. And I'm going to show you what that means. Again, hopefully the camera works here. But everywhere on the outside of a jacket that you have stitching, sorry, this isn't super clear, but you'll see there's stitching that's holding this zipper into this. This is the outside of the jacket. This is all waterproof here. But all those little holes, they poke holes in the waterproofing. So on the inside of the jacket, there's actually these little pieces of clear tape, and you can see it's right here, that cover the stitching. And that's what I mean when I say there must have taped seams. And so this jacket is fully waterproof. You could take a shower in it and it would not soak through. An example of a non-taped seam, this is an old Patagonia Houdini. And if you look at this Houdini, you can see that, this is really hard to see, sorry. This is not as clear as I hope, but you can see that this is just a flap. There's no tape over it. All those little seam holes are just holes. This is not waterproof. This is a thought and a prayer. It does absolutely nothing. So you have to have a waterproof jacket. I really don't like allowing ponchos. Strictly speaking, a poncho is a giant taped seam. It's a single tape seam because there's no seams, right? It's all extruded plastic. Ponchos are garbage and you should not use them. I literally only do this because some people are adamant about it and it's easier than fighting them. If you're in a poncho and you get caught in an emergency situation, so just don't carry it. It's not worth it. The reason for that is ponchos literally provide zero breathability. When you're working at any level, you're creating sweat. As soon as you stop, that is a coating of moisture between you, your core temperature, and the outside air, and you go hypothermic incredibly quickly. So you need to have something that at least allows some passage of vapor from you out. Otherwise, you're going to end up in a situation. Now, a Gore-Tex jacket's still not going to breathe perfectly, but it's better than nothing. So I highly encourage you to get a good waterproof shell. You can get really compact ones. You can get really expensive ones. You can get cheap ones. It doesn't really make a big difference so long as it's waterproof and the size can fit in your pack. The fabric tends to breathe about the same either way. The one consideration I would encourage you to think about is simply durability. I have some really lightweight ones that I've used over the years and they just wear out faster. So if it's something that you're not going to be using a lot, of those lightweight ones can save you a ton of space and weight, but they can also just wear out really fast. So if you have questions, shoot me an email. I feel like every year I'm a buying guide a bit for the jackets and I'm happy to help. Collapsible cup, that's the last of your required gear. I highly recommend accordion style cups. This is a sink, literally a fluid cup, and it collapses like this. I love these. I do not recommend using the UD squishy ones that everybody gets, or the Hydro Flask ones. They just don't work for hot foods. You can't use them for hot drinks and you can't set them down. So the nice thing about this is that it's rigid. So you have this ring at the top that you can hold when it's hot. And when you set this down, it doesn't collapse. So when you put soups in here or you're using some solid foods that we have, it actually holds it. It's also really nice when you're trying to drink like Coke or something and you're also trying to like mess with your kit. You can set this next to you, mess with your stuff, pick this back up and it hasn't fallen over. Those Hydro Flask ones, you literally just have to hold until they fall over or they're empty. So definitely recommend this. This is a 1 cup size, and it's a Cedar Summit, I want to say, GSI, Amazon knockoffs. There's a million of these out there now. Definitely think the 1 cup is the smallest you want to go. If I'm going to be going into nighttime, I often carry the 2 cup version because I like to walk with soups and stuff and just like not sit and eat, I'll walk and eat. So having that extra volume can help. But this one's really nice because it fits in almost every pocket in your chest pocket really nicely, and it also fits in the side pockets really well. So the 1 cup is kind of a sweet spot. So that's the required gear for the base. And then you have your required divide gear. Remember, you're only picking this up from Cottonwood, which is 30 miles, and you're carrying it to Monarch, which is 60 some miles. And this is the kind of gear that's going to save your life or you're never going to use. And you might sweat your ass off and carry all this, and you might be on the ridge in a snowstorm and only be able to tell me about it because you have this gear. So this is oftentimes stuff people don't use or use a lot. It starts with pants. It can be any form of pant. You can carry goddamn jeans. I do not care. You have to have pants. Tights, capris don't work, but full length, anything else works. I like to carry these really light rain shell pants from Arc'teryx that I bought a while ago. They roll into a similar size as my bivy. They work great. A lot of people will literally just change into tights at some point, and that counts too. If you're wearing this, you don't also have to carry it. So you can save a lot of weight and space in your pack if you're planning on just running in tights anyways, or you change into tights at some point. You can just carry the one. You can wear it instead of carrying it too. You have to have a second light source. I phrase this as 2 light sources. So this is your base gear light source that you've already been carrying for the whole race, which for most people, again, is going to be like a cell phone. The second light is the light you're actually going to be using. So your main lamp or waist belt, whatever you plan on using. If you're carrying a waist, like a Kogala or something, and a headlamp and a phone, you've got 3 light sources, you're killing it. Like, it's fine. But really just planning that divide gear is going to be your secondary light source. If you're super fast, you don't need to pick up a big heavy lamp at Cottonwood, right? Like the front runners are going to be through Monarch and Daylight. They don't need to carry a big lamp. So they'll often carry little tiny headlamps in addition to their secondary, their emergency light source, which would be like their phone or something else. So this is going to depend on where you're actually pacing and where nighttime comes in. So just keep that in mind. Beanie or a buff, either or, whichever your preference is, and then an extra layer up, which is a long sleeve upper. The only layer you should be carrying in the mountains is merino wool if you're worried about weather. And the reason for that is merino wool retains all of its thermal properties when it's wet. So polyester, cotton, regular wool even does not retain thermal value. And the point of this is, again, an emergency, right? You've run into a scenario and you have to hunker down and wait, or a huge storm blows in. So a lightweight merino, I'm a big fan of like the Smart Wool or Icebreaker layers. They all make different weights, which is just the thickness of the fabric. I like the lightest weight. If it's like not forecasted to be cold, there's no reason to carry a bunch of gear. The lightweight ones, fantastic. They're so nice. And if it's super, super cold out, you can carry something else. The only thing I say, there's no cotton. So if you want to carry a polyester long sleeve, that does work. I don't think it's a great choice, but it totally meets the requirements. So sun hoodies or just a long sleeve running shirt does meet this. And remember, if you're physically wearing it, it counts as carrying it. So if you've changed into a long sleeve shirt at Hancock, you don't still have to carry a long sleeve shirt in your backpack. You've met the requirements. And like I mentioned earlier, the Corsair card, you got to have that, but you don't have to physically carry it on you. So that's the gear. This always gets a few people. People show up to the race and they just don't plan. They don't read. They haven't looked at a single email. They haven't looked at the website, and they're like, "What do you mean?" If that happens, you're out of luck. You got to go bum it from somebody at the finish line, or sorry, the start line usually. If you don't have it, you're DQ'd. I have DQ'd people for not carrying their gear. It's very, very rare, fortunately, but it does happen. So we take it seriously. And there have been multiple times where this gear list is the reason why we haven't lost people out there and stuff hasn't turned scary. So I know a lot of years people get done and they're like, why did I carry this? If you didn't use emergency gear, that's great. Every time you buckle your seatbelt and didn't need it, it's a great day. So think of it the same way. Any questions before we move on to the Q&A with our past runners? We're going to keep these questions quick, so if you have them, drop them in right away. Okay. All right. We're going to go ahead and move on to our Q&A with our past finishers. So I'll introduce them, and then we'll go through in the same order and have them just jump off of mute, turn their cameras on, and say a little bit about themselves before we go into questions. I'll preface this by saying the point of this is to ask people, and all of these people have multiple finishes, so they have a lot of context to the race throughout different weather conditions and different temperatures and different fitnesses and all that stuff. This is your chance to ask somebody who's done it and get like real world data. So specific stuff is fine. If you're asking about like race rules and stuff like that, that's me. Save that for the end. But this is a really good chance to get some from the horse's mouth, as they used to say. So first up, we've got Silke Coaster, who is our one of our legacy runners. She lives in Boulder and has run and finished 7 times. And then we've got Kevin Canaday, who recently moved to Buena Vista, and we're stoked about that. Kevin also has 7 finishes. Although he has 8 starts, Western States cost him a race 1 year, but he got to Hancock, so hell yeah. We got Josh Grant from California. Josh is 3 finishes, and he's on the wait list for number 4. And then we've got Jill Fregoso, who is going 2 finishes and is down from Louisiana. And her husband is running this year, so she'll be back up for that. And last minute, because Mr. John Davis jumped on this call, we've got him jumping in as well. John has the most finishes at High Lonesome and has 100% batting average. So he's 8 for 8, including 2 hard rock doubles with high-low, which is really fucking impressive. So those are your people. Let's start with Silke, and then we'll go just Kevin, Josh, Jill, and then John. In that order, jump on rather, put your cameras on and tell us just a little bit about you, favorite section of the course, favorite race memory, something like that, just so people kind of know a little bit about you, and then we'll jump into questions from people who are on right now. So Silke, take us away.
Hi, everybody. Let's see. High Lonesome is my favorite 100 of all the 100s I've done. It's also the one I've done the most, so I'm glad I like it. My favorite part of the course is the out and back section, not just because you get to see everybody, but also because that section's really nice. The 2 sides of Laws Pass are really different. The St. Elmo side is kind of longer and more gradual, and then the Cottonwood side is sort of short and sweet. So there are 2 different experiences, and you get to do them uphill and downhill, both of them. So that's my favorite part of the course.
Awesome. Thanks, Silke. Kevin, you're up.
Hey guys. Yeah, I will agree with Silke that Hilo is the best 100 miler, undoubtedly. That's why I'm back every year. So I have run Hilo while living at 1,000 feet and also at 8,500 feet. So if anybody has like sea level type questions, I can give you some firsthand experience on maybe how to train for that versus anyone who's actually living in altitude. My favorite section of the course is the switchbacks coming out of Tin Cup. So there's single track, really cruiser single track, gentle on the CDT that takes you up into this amazing wide open basin. And it's just a stunning area of the course. Make sure you turn around once you get up there.
Awesome. Thank you, Kevin. Josh.
So this will hopefully be my 4th start, and I fell in love with it from the very beginning. Everything about it's great, from the pre-race briefing that Caleb and crew do to the start line. It's just gorgeous. It's a great event. I'm coming from sea level. I've done all 3 from literally my house is at 310 feet, I think. I've got to drive about 4 hours to get any kind of elevation above 2,000 feet. So that's my struggle, but I thoroughly enjoy it. And my favorite part of the course is after Tin Cup. Coming up on Hancock, right above that Continental Divide is stunning. If you can catch that at sunset, like I usually do at late mid-pack, it's it's eye-openingly beautiful. It'll bring some tears to your eyes. And one of my favorite memories was earlier than that. It was at St. Elmo 2, and I don't know if Caleb will remember it, but I remember it fondly. I got a little foot massage from Caleb last time I was there, 2023. So if you happen to catch him at St. Elmo 2, take advantage of that. It's wonderful.
You did me dirty there, Josh. I hate feet. But only for you. Awesome. Thank you, Josh. Jill, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes, I think I have everyone beat. I live in New Orleans, so I'm actually below sea level. But I found out about the race actually through a Facebook group, a women's running group, and fell in love with it before I even entered because it was half men and half women. So I really love that about this race. I have finished 2 times, start 2 times. As Caleb mentioned, my husband's running it this year, so I'll be out there crewing and pacing him. I love the start of the race. It is gorgeous. You're running downhill, so you have a couple of miles truly where it's for people who don't live in the mountains, I think it's one of the most beautiful places on earth. And I do love all of the course. I have to say I've hiked in Colorado, Idaho, Wyoming, and I tell everybody this course has the best parts of every one of my favorite hiking trails on it. So truly beautiful start to finish. And I also love the section after Tin Cup. I was able to make it there a little earlier this past year, and truly nothing like it.
Awesome. Thank you, Jill. I think that we should probably quantify the lowest sea level starts ever and make like a leaderboard for that. See if we get any like Death Valley folks that show up. Awesome. Thank you. And then last but not least, Mr. John Davis. Tell us about you. I probably walked away the minute this started. It's my suspicion. All right, we'll move on. Oh, he found the mute button.
I just hit the camera button, not the mute button. My bad. Anyway, John Davis. I live in Frederick, Colorado, which is almost 5,000 feet. I get to just drive over to Silke's house, and we get to go for runs in Boulder all the time. Favorite section, the out and back section is a different feel just because it is a 50-50 split. And so most other races, if you're doing any out and back, it's just like, a bunch of dudes high-fiving each other. This just has a totally different feel, and it's really cool seeing men and women, just the whole time. It's really neat. The section that Kevin was talking about, the switchbacks, but just beyond that is this incredibly beautiful section that is up high for a long time above tree line. And I've hiked or done big portions of that trail, several times, and it's insane. It's absolutely stunning up there.
Well, I'm really stoked you all love the Sawatch as much as I did, because I think it's the best place in the world. But let's talk about suffering in the Sawatch, since that's really why we're here. First questions. Drop it in the chat or pop yourself off of mute, and we'll kind of filter it towards whomever feels the right fit or the most passionate. Amanda is asking in the chat. She's referencing how the worst finisher statistic is second time high lonesomers. All of you have successfully done that. But Amanda's going for her second. How does she survive? Amanda, you're in New Mexico, right? So you've got some altitude. Yeah. Oh man, so many chats come in. All right, real quick, let's go. Josh Grant, you had a rough second time. Tell me about it.
I had a rough third time too, though. But the second time, just remember the good parts from that first time. That's all I did. It's positive. My thing is positive mental energy, because I can get down real quick and spiral if I don't keep it really, really positive. So try and remember how beautiful that spot is after Tin Cup. and how pretty that sunrise is around Purgatory Monarch area. And that's what kept me going.
Jill, you were nodding your head too there. What do you think about your last finish, your number 2?
I absolutely agree with Josh. Try to think about the good times from the first one, because you do start to remember and think about all the times that were really tough or really hard. My second one, I definitely had a rougher time going up the head wall. I had stomach issues the second time, which I didn't experience the first time. I had a little bit of a mental breakdown right at the top of the head wall. And so you do need to remember that it's not your pain and your suffering is not linear in this race. Whatever you're feeling at mile 25, 50, you're not going to be linearly feeling that at 75, 90. So you can turn it around. So get your mind right when you're thinking about it. And then the second time I would just say also just try to mentally remember, okay, I've done this before. I've been successful before, and just keep that mentality as you go through.
Good feedback. And just remember that like suffering happens, right? Like it's easy to get caught in your head. You're like, the first year I wasn't suffering this early, or like Jill said, I didn't have this issue. Now I have it. Therefore I'm worse. Not necessarily. You could just be having a worse day, or there could be different conditions. Like a lot of people at Cottonwood will tell me all of their problems, and all of their problems magically go away if they just don't stop. So, okay, we have kind of a flurry of questions for the Flatlanders and the Sea Levelers. So let's split this. Looks like there's kind of 2 questions. One is about, well, actually we have 3. So all of them are coming from sea level. Questions about managing nutrition at higher altitude, arriving early, and training at sea level for an altitude race. So it's kind of a flurry. Who wants to jump in first on anyone?
I'll take it. I can take it.
All right, Josh, and then Kevin.
All right, go for it.
I've always heard that as far as arriving early for elevation, if you're not acclimated, either arrive about 5 or more days prior or just before. Otherwise, you just get all the detriments of elevation without the benefits if you show up between that 2 to 4 day window. I'm not any kind of doctor, not even average smart intelligence. That's just what I understand and I've heard. I do spend a lot of time in the mountains though.
I've heard the same thing, Josh. So what it's worth, not a doctor, but I heard the same thing. Kevin, what were you going to jump in and say?
Well, I would agree with Josh, but I would extend it even more than 5 days. I think like within a week, you're just asking for trouble because you're going to get poor sleep. Like you're going to be antsy. You're going to want to go out and run. It's going to feel terrible. So like, unless you can get there a week or more out, show up like 2 days before and drink a shit ton of water because you're going to come here and you're going to just like shrivel up and die. So hydrate, a lot of electrolytes, try to eat what you can. In terms of other questions about like training and like stimulating altitude and whatnot, in terms of nutrition at altitude, I know John Davis seems to be a little bit of a fan about like liquids and Coke at high altitude and only doing such things. So I would agree with that, especially if you're not like if you haven't raced at altitude in the past, you don't know what your stomach's going to do. Go with like the simpler the better, especially above, honestly, between like Cottonwood and Monarch, because you're basically above 10,000 feet the whole time. So Coke, soups, popsicles, something simple that you can drink that you're not going to force your stomach to work on. Because if your stomach is working, it's just going to be pulling blood away from your muscles. In terms of training, and you don't have a sauna. So what I had done, I had lived in Wisconsin for a couple of years while training for the race. And what I would do would go out in the heat of the day, and it's usually pretty humid, and drive home with the car windows up and the heat on for like at least a half hour and just like sit in it. Just get used to being really uncomfortable. It'll help theoretically get your blood volume, your blood plasma volume up a little bit. And then what I noticed more when I came to the race was I felt like slightly short of breath, but I didn't feel like affected by the altitude so much. So my output wasn't bad, it just felt weird. So that's what I would just suggest. If you don't have access to a sauna or an altitude room or whatever, sit in a hot car at the end of like a 20 miler.
Good advice. We have kind of the inverse question now. Kayla's asking for folks at elevation, what did your weekly elevation gain and vert look like during peak training? Silke, then John, I guess, if John has feedback on that too. What do you guys think?
I'm not like a data nerd, so I probably don't have any numbers for all you folks who like numbers. And ultimately, I think it depends on you. It depends on what you have time for. It depends on what you have access to. And so just take advantage of what's at your doorstep. I think the most important kind of running you can do is literally just out your front door, because that's what you can do the most. So if that's, you know, a 20-foot hill in your neighborhood that you can just go round and round and round. You can supplement that kind of, you know, if you don't have a ton of access to vert from your front door, you can, you know, you can do squat workouts and some weight training that can help simulate that kind of fatigue on your muscles. So I'm the kind of person who I think it's important not to get too sort of overwhelmed by numbers. And I think the most important thing you can do is just what you can do.
Yeah, absolutely. What you can do. If Silke and I are actually doing a mountain leg challenge right now, where we're doing these silly single leg lunges and things like that, which is really, I've never done that seriously in the past, and I am absolutely feeling it. So I'm excited to see how that translates this year. But during peak training, I would say being lucky enough to be close to the mountains, you know, anywhere from maybe 4,000 to 8,000 feet per week in the peak. And then sometimes a little bit more, depending on what kind of runs we go on. But I don't think it's really 100%. It's not necessary to do that. I would say just get consistent training as long as you possibly can before the race. Consistency is key.
Let me put a spin on this, and because this often comes up in these questions, but it's a mountain race, but there's not a ton of vert necessarily, right? Like the bite sizes are pretty, like 2,000 feet is like a common climb size outside of the first one. Do you prioritize vert training, time on feet, distance? Like kind of what's your go-to metric that you're kind of targeting when you're trying to prep? And thinking of this kind of like peak season.
I think there's a lot of running in this race compared to other big mountain races. Like a lot of fire road, Jeep road kind of runnable roads. That's really difficult for me. Anything that's like 5%, 6% grade for a long period of time destroys me. And so working on that type of, that type of fitness, I think will really, really pay off. There's not anything terribly steep for very long. So there are some really steep sections, but they're punchy and fairly quick. So that's sort of just like mellow uphill running for a long period of time is worth it.
You're muted, Caleb.
Boomer me. Yeah. I'm sorry, John, for dissing you. I got in trouble one year because of the pre-race meeting. I think it was the first or the second year. I described Little Browns as quite runnable, and people just raped me at the finish line. They're like, how dare you call that runnable? And I was like, yeah, that's fair. When I was doing it, I was super jacked up on caffeine and was in really good shape. And now I go up there and I'm like, this isn't runnable. So a lot of this is like, it's very contextual to you. And that's why some of this is hard to extrapolate from other people. But don't take the do what you can do approach as like a cop-out answer. It's just genuinely that's kind of how it tends to play out at the 100-mile distance. But all right, let's circle back up to some of these questions. So real quick, let's do this one. This one should go fast. Have any of you 5 experienced lightning in the exposed sections of the course? And if so, where would you do? So, okay, you were nodding your head, yes.
Yes, I think every year, maybe there's been one year where there hasn't been a grumble in a spicy section. I don't think I've ever had anything that was like hair standing up, kind of scary, but there's always been a threat, a grumble in the sky, some dark clouds, a couple flashes, either over Laws Pass, or in that section after Tin Cup that folks described, where it's like this high altitude bowl that kind of rolls for a really long time. So Laws Pass is a little bit easier because you can kind of get up and back over the other side somewhat quickly. It's a little more stressful when you're in that section after Tin Cup, because you're up there for a long time. But I've also had some storms at night on other sections of the divide, and rain. It's also rained at least a little bit most times.
Laws Pass every single year. It's never been, I've never seen a strike, but it's always threatening when you're up there. And so getting over that pass both directions, it's the time of day when the storms roll in, for me anyway. And so getting over that section quickly, I think, is as quickly as you can, is good. I guess I have run into a storm or seen some lightning kind of off in the distance in the middle of the night, up on the divide section. But other than that, it's mostly Laws Pass for me, and it's every single year.
I think one thing too, Caleb mentioned maybe last year's athlete briefing was to get low if there is lightning and to just make yourself as low to the ground as possible. I haven't had to do that, but I definitely remember him telling us about that. And then we've had hail. I've had hail when I've been running. So just keeping moving forward. I do also remember Caleb mentioning that the race used to be 36 hours instead of 37-hour cutoff to specifically allow for times that you might have to stop due to the storms. So I think that's also helpful to know mentally as well.
Yeah, like the others, Laws Pass always seems to be the foreboding one. But then in a non-exposed section, in theory, I think it was 2021 when you had to pause the race right about, I don't know, I was at like mile 95 or something, and there was lightning, and that was one of the biggest storms I've ever been out in. Thankfully I was low by then. I don't think anyone would have been up high at that point.
Yeah, that was a spooky year. We had a what do they call them, a microburst that just popped in at Raspberry 2 and worked its way across the finish line, and it stopped the race for an hour. It was brutal. We had an aid station captain.
Did you feed the dogs?
I did feed the dogs.
Okay.
The dogs are fed, guys. They're such shitbags. They're just like, I'm so hungry. I haven't been fed yet today. And we will believe them if we aren't on top of this. Anyways, moral of the story is storms can happen anywhere on this course. That's why we cover the gear before we get to this section, because everybody does a really good job of validating that like weather happens. It's very variable though, if you haven't picked up on this. Like the reason everybody's highlighting Laws Pass is because we have a monsoonal weather pattern that typically means a storm from 11 to 4. which is when most people are going over the Lost Pass, which is why most people are doing it. But to Silke's point, I mean, she's hit storms on the divide before in the middle of the night. People have had blizzard conditions for 4 hours, and everybody either side of them never put on anything more than a long sleeve. It's just wild. But all right, let's move on to some other questions. We got a bit of a backlog, so scrolling back up here. Let's see. I gotta read these a second. All right, let's touch on the poll conversation. Let's do this briefly. Show of hands. Silke, John, everybody else. Hopefully you're on their screen, so maybe not show of hands. Vote. I can see you all, so I'll distill this if people can't. But out of you five, polls, no polls.
No.
No.
Okay, so we got 2 no's, 1 yes, 2 maybes. That's the distinction. So let's go. All right, Jill, you're yes to polls. Tell us why and why you like them.
Absolutely. Well, first, because I think the race is quite mountainous and has a lot of vert, and I don't find there's a lot of sections that I can run in, nor very much of anything going uphill. I've come in the golden hour my first year, and then like 35 hours and 45 minutes last year. So I'm a back of the packer, and I definitely use the poles. They've helped save my knees, and and I find if hiking fast up, just being consistent, not stopping, but the poles have been helpful.
Cool. Okay. Excellent. Let's see what else we got back up in the chat.
Can I say one thing on polls?
Yes.
If you're good at them, they're good for good for the uphill. My biggest complaint about polls is it takes your hands away from you and away from eating and drinking, and I think that's more important than using poles to hike uphill. If you're good with poles, they're great for some sections, but remember to eat and drink.
Yeah. Yeah, very true. All right, another question in there. Megan was asking that she's a much stronger uphill hiker than she is a downhill runner. Will she be okay? And how does she improve at downhill running? I feel like that's a common thing people ask. Like, it's hard to train big, long downhills when you don't live anywhere near big, long downhills, right? But it's easier to learn hiking because of Stairmasters or treadmills or something like that. So what do you guys think?
I'll just say one thing. If you are able to go anywhere, like, yes, I live in New Orleans, but for example, this past weekend, we flew to Phoenix, drove the 4 hours to the Grand Canyon, ran down South Kaibab. I mean, if you do have the ability to go even for 1 or 2 weekends before the race, and with the West being so dry now, if you can get out there to run some downhill, I think that's the best. Also, eccentric exercises. So, single lunges, dips, things like that, where you're just working on the muscles that you would need for downhills. And being at sea level, I'm either on the treadmill, like usually twice a week for a half hour or so, 12 to 15% incline. And then otherwise it's doing strength exercises for the eccentric exercises that you could look up online that is helpful for me being at a sea level flat.
So I would suggest also doing whatever you consider rolling road long runs with your full pack on and just crush your quads. Your quads don't know if you're going uphill, downhill, or flat. It just knows what damage they're taking. Just put as much damage as you can on them. Get them strong, and then, do what Jill was saying, like basically strength train your quads. Because if you can't find a 45-minute descent like you're going to have coming off of after Antero aid station, your best next option is just crush them as long as you can with whatever weight you can put on them.
Well, I want to hijack this thread right now because I feel like there's always a point where Silke talks about the Colorado Trail during these question and answers. And I feel like this is the moment of how do you maximize the course to your advantage in terms of like where it's runnable, but also where does it fit your skill sets, right? Like if you're Megan and you're coming from a place that's lower elevation but lots of rolling hills, the CT might be a good spot for you.
Yeah, the Colorado Trail. Don't discount those last 20, 25 miles. You're off the big high mountains, but you're on some really tedious rolling terrain with a few little spicy uphills in there that hit you pretty hard at that point. I think the cutoffs are set up so that you have to kind of be moving reasonably well in that section. So I always try, I have yet to nail that section, but I'm always thinking about it. It haunts my dreams because it's really hard to run. It's a little rocky, some sections, some other sections are actually smooth, but in the moment feel harder than they actually are. It's quite runnable. So kind of like what John mentioned earlier, just doing some running is important for that last 20 miles.
But it's still at 9,500 feet.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, it looks on the map like, oh, this is gonna be easy. You got to be fueled and like you got to be feeling well to even like shuffle through there. But if you can shuffle, you'll pass a lot of people.
Yeah, if you can run even partially that last chunk, the only time I've ever had a pacer or crew, it was Kevin Smiler who linked up with me around Monarch, and he took me to blanks, and I was able to move faster than the prior two times. So as far as just the side note, pacer consideration, if you can get a pacer to push you that last chunk, that's where you can make up some big time. It's very, very runnable compared to the first 2/3.
Yeah. What would be, if you guys had to say don't blow up on a climb or a descent, right? What would that, I think I know the answer, but I'm curious what you guys say. What do you think this section would be to not overdo it?
I would say don't run hard down the Antero road. That will really, I mean, I say that every year and then I Superman it down.
It's literally double any other descent in the race.
It's a great descent. It's super fun. It's rocky, sections are super runnable. It's incredible, but don't blow it there. That really, you'll pay for that. And then also coming from Monarch, there's like there's a steep section coming down from there. Take that kind of, slow, whatever, because then after that, you get onto some roads that are somewhat downhill and runnable. And if you can save your legs, after that to get into, I guess, Fooses there. What is it? 7-8 miles of almost purely runnable road there.
Yeah, 7 miles, and the first 3/4 of the descent from the ridge is the only steep spot.
Yeah, and it's steep. Like it'll burn your quads, and you're in rough shape at that point, no matter who you are. So it's a tough little section coming down.
Thumbs up if you think Antero descent is the downhill to watch. Kevin's giving a side head.
I actually think the descent into Cottonwood gets people in trouble because it's steeper and you're running to your crew. So like, oh, hell yeah, I'm going to see my crew. And people just like go faster than they should. And then usually what happens is they turn around and they're all amped up and they feel great for the first like gentle 3/4 of a mile until it starts getting steep again. And then you got to just march up another 2,000 feet.
Yeah.
And it's just debilitating because you just came over the other side. And now you're leaving your crew. And now you got to go all the way to Hancock to see your crew again. I think that's like a sneaky spot where people I don't know, just aren't as cognizant as what's happening. Because you're like, oh, I'm heading into 50K. This is great. And you just push a little much because there's a lot of, especially once you get into tree line, a couple hundred feet below tree line, there's a lot of good running in there. And then you see a crew, you're all amped up, you turn around and you're like, oh crap, now I got to go back up. And again, there can be weather there. You might be heading up. I remember one year I went up, and probably within 300 vertical feet, it probably dropped 20 degrees just because of the weather that came through. So I I was just being stupid. I didn't pull out my jacket, but I got like nearly hypothermic. There's a tiny little creek crossing and you're going back up just as you're getting out of tree line. I had to sit there and like do jumping jacks to try to get warm again before I went up and over.
Yeah.
Just because like, it's just easy to get caught up in the moment. So just, be aware.
Fair. All right, good talk there. Let's switch to Mackenzie's question about different pacer strategies. So I think this is kind of maybe touching a bit on what Josh was saying about where he picked his pacer out. But Mackenzie, do you have a specific question in mind, like something you're thinking about doing and you want to hear what people think, or are you just looking for like broad strokes here?
Broad strokes.
So if you just have one pacer, I personally liked it right at the end because that's where I'm mentally at my low point. That 75 to 85% portion of any race is where I've mentally hit the bottom and I'm dragging. And that's where on this course, the Colorado Trail, that's so runnable right there relative to the rest of the course. It's so runnable. And if you've got someone there with you to push you or pull you, it helped me tremendously. And that's different than like the crux, what I would consider the crux, going up the head wall, then over that ridge to purgatory. That's the most difficult portion of the race by far for me. And I know I can struggle through that and push through it because I'm still relatively fresh. I want someone to pull me at the end, that pull my corpse as far as they can, as fast as they can. So that was my pacing strategy with only one pacer. If you have two, then you've got a lot more options.
So would you guys, the rest of you guys agree one pacer you'd favor, like Monarch in somewhere in that zone for having a single pacer?
I would say Monarch to Raspberry is the crux. If you can get them for that, what is that, 25 miles or something? Because by the time you get Raspberry 2, like you're on the home stretch.
Yeah, I think it also, that section from Monarch is, in the middle of the night for a lot of people. And so if you're going with a pacer, that's a good section. Sometimes people get sleepy in the middle of the night like me, and it's good to have somebody to mess around with, joke with, whatever. But the Colorado Trail section is good. The guy who's behind Silka right there has pulled me on that section before, and
that's a Mr. Ryan Smith.
It was pretty brutal, but great. But that's a really good section of a pacer too. That's a hard section. Like these other people have said, it looks pretty mellow on paper, but it's a tough section. It's especially if you're trying to. It seems very runnable, and so you're trying to run, and it's really hard and hot. Oh my gosh!
All right, so if you had a full field, let's say you had the ability to go Hancock in those three classic segments, would you do that? Or is there a section that you could have a pacer that you would actually say you're better off going solo? No.
It just depends on. I've done it both ways, with no pacer at all, and then I've done it with pacers. So it really depends on kind of what you're looking for in the race. I've done it as just kind of being out there by myself, and then also having friends along is just a big celebration, and it's super fun that way too. So I don't know. It depends on the type of person and the type of runner you are. And sometimes I don't like having a pacer because then I just have somebody to complain to. And when I don't have a pacer, I have to keep going, and I have to really focus on myself and my nutrition, and I don't have anybody there to help me. And so I have to focus more. That seems to actually help me the most.
Yeah, I would say if you're like concerned about safety, take a pacer from Hancock to Monarch. But otherwise, it's choose your own adventure. Yeah, it's like, what do you want them for? What are you best at? Like, do you feed off another person, or like, yeah, I'm kind of like John, where it's like, if I have another person and shit's going bad, they're probably not going to pull me out. I'm probably going to pull them down. So I have also done what John's done. It's like, I'm just going alone. Or I just tag along with John and we just suffer together for a while.
I love it. All right, there's so many good answers in here, but we have to keep moving, unfortunately. Brandon asked a good question about dealing with dust. Did anybody have a specific dust memory mitigation strategy? I'll say this: if there's vehicles, it's dusty. But if there's no vehicles, I wouldn't stress it. It's not like states level or bighorn moon dust kind of level stuff, but where there's vehicles, it can get dusty. A watered down buff over your nose, if you're super sensitive, will filter out most of the particulates out of that.
The concern is smoke, not dust.
Yeah, very true. All right, Tim asks another classically good question. If you're going to come out and preview the course for one or two sections, what are they? I want this rapid fire, no context, no beta, just the whys. We're going to go finishes up to bottom. Jill, you lead us.
I would say the portion after Monarch. So you get the steep downhill and some of the rolling.
Okay. Cool. All right, Josh.
I would say Lost Wonder to Monarch, because I've always wanted to see that in the daylight, and it's physically the crux for me. And if I could get a little preview of that, that's what I would want.
Okay. Good question. So okay.
I would go up to the Antero, up and over whatever that section is called, the high part of the course in the beginning. It's really pretty. You get a taste of altitude, and you get to see, really far from up there, so you get like a nice visual. That section is really great.
Yeah, both Josh and Silkate's boat are loopable with a little bit of like gerrymandering, and then Jill's boat of kind of Monarch to the finish. That's a really good, if you have a shuttle, it's a really simple shuttle to have somebody drop you off and move a car. So those are all really really good options. Kevin, what's your vote?
Silke took mine, but another one, and this is a unique one, but park in St. Elmo and run Tinka Pass Road. Go up into the basin down to Hancock, and then run the road down from Hancock all the way back down to St. Elmo. And the reason I say that is because Tinka Pass Road can be really annoying if you've never been on it. It's like super douche grade. It's usually like noon to 6 p.m. for most people. But then you get the payoff of being up in that giant basin, and then you get down to Hancock, but then you get to run a pretty gradual dirt road down, which is, you'll find that throughout the entire course. So it's like simulates what you'll see elsewhere. And it's loopable.
Yeah, that's a good one too. John?
Okay, took mine too. It's loopable. You get up high, you get epic views. You can also go to the top of the mountain if you want to. You don't get to do it on race day, but worth it if you have the time. I would say that.
Yeah, lots of good options. I think the only thing I would add to this that just sort of adds to what Josh said is there's a lot of beauty on the course that you'll hit during the night. And it might not necessarily benefit you from like a logistics or training perspective to see that ahead of time, but just getting a look at like the glacier tarns that are below the head wall, or or seeing Chalk Creek Pass in the daylight, like those are just really special places in the world. They're worth seeing. So even if you don't do like a training run, they're good shakeout runs. They're good, like just little samplers. Like try to hit some of those sections and just see it, because it's pretty enough that it warrants it. All right, this has been super helpful. We're getting close to our / slightly over our time window here, so I want to wrap us up. Thank you to all 5 of you for jumping on and giving us some good context. We will be doing, hopefully, I say this every year, but hopefully on our trail work weekend, we'll try to organize some loose group runs where we get to do some of these runs that were just talked about. So keep an eye for that. But in the meantime, thank you to all you guys for jumping on and sharing your hard-earned wisdom. Cool.
Thank you.
All right. I'm gonna try to close up this last section pretty quick. I'm gonna start with snowpack because Amanda dropped that in the chat a little bit ago. The snowpack's brutal. Today is supposed to be the deepest snowpack we have of the year, and it's the lowest ever been recorded by an insane margin. We have maybe 1.5 feet of snow left on the gauges, and they should have close to 10 to 15 feet on those gauges. So it's terrible. So unbelievably dry, insane fire risk, lots of threat from smoke, from fires that aren't right next to us, but are still, you know, possibly blowing smoke into us. So it's just a bad year. The only good side to this entire fucking fiasco of a drought is that most of the course is going to be open weeks, if not months early. So your ability to get out, if you're local or have trips planned, your ability to see country that normally you wouldn't be able to see until 3 weeks before the race, you can see probably at least a month earlier than that now. So that is the plus. I have not been from Monarch to Thusis. There's definitely snow in that drainage, but generally all of the Colorado Trail section is good to go. Like, go send it. Little Grounds, probably, I don't know, God, a week or 2 from it being pretty much all bone dry. Laws Pass, had some friends get up there. They made it. There's snow, but they made it. I mean, it's so dry. I don't know what else to say. Like, if you can get out and run it now. Might as well. If not, like, all of your stuff should be open at least a month earlier, if not a month and a half, would be my rough guess for the high stuff. So normally I would take you into the snow gauges and actually show you how to read that graph so that you could time what we're talking about. This year just makes that completely a waste of time. So you know, as we're cruising mid-May, send it. Like, you'll probably be surprised at how dry it is, unfortunately. Just watch for big dumps. It's still reasonable to assume that we'll get one storm that knocks 2 feet of snow down and it's gone in a week, but it's still, that week would be miserable to be up there. So just keep an eye on that. A really important one that I want to discuss, though, and I always struggle to know where to put this, because I think it's super helpful, but it's also doesn't need a lot of like talking through, and that's pace prediction. So, you know, a lot of what we were just talking about right now was it all sort of touches on pace, right? Like, where are you going to be at dark? Where's your speed kind of fall into the course's style and stuff like that. So I want to show you a really high level, simplistic way to plan for some scenarios. And so this is open split time. This is, if you go to the course page and you scroll just down, there's 2 links to plan your effort. There's one called Ultra Pacer, and there's Open Split. Both are slightly different. I'm just going to talk about Open Split because we're a little over time right now. This is the tracking site that we use. So during race day, this is where your grandma's going to be, your grandpa's going to be, all your friends and family, they're going to be looking at the site. When the race isn't going on, you can just go in and see the High Lonesome course. And you can see down here, we've got all of the race years. So you can look at every single split, any single finisher. But what I want you to look at right now is this Plan My Effort tab. And this is so basic. You're sitting here being like, I don't know what I'm going to run. If you've run some hundreds, like say you've run Bighorn at 3 or 4 hours, Say you've run Bear at an hour or two. You've run Hard Rock, knock a couple hours off, like whatever. Just try to find some relative ballpark you can type in. For this, let's just say 34 hours. We're going to do 34, and I'm going to say, create my plan. And this is going to spit out a plan with all the splits based on every single person in high-low who's run 34 hours as close as they can deduce it. So this specific one is based on 85 people on this exact course who were really close to 34 hours. And here's the average of what all those 85 people did. And it'll spit out time in, time out, your segment times. And what I really like is how long you're in aid stations. And this is a huge, huge thing to look at. If you look at this time right now, 2.5 hours almost in aid stations is an insane margin if you factor in that you're almost at the end of the race. And if you want to just see it like for context, like let's look at like a CR level pace, which would be like 20 hours, 34 minutes. That's how long they're spending in aid stations. So there is so much time to be gained and lost just in your logistics of where you're hemorrhaging time because you're just in a pain cave or you're dealing with a blister or something. But like, never lose sight of this column. This is the one you control. Out of all of this, this is what you can manage the best. The rest of it's just kind of up there. A common cutoff in my mind is like 30 hours. Less than 30 is really good at high-low. That's like a really fast time for an average Joe. And you look at this, hour and 43 minutes in cutoffs, or sorry, in aid stations. Here's your pace predictions. They give you kind of everything broken down. So I really like this. I would encourage you to create 3 tabs, print these off and give these to your crew. You're going to have everything is going the best it's ever gone for me. That's your A goal, right? You're like, best case scenario, how am I doing? I think I can hit this time. Then you have your, what have I usually hit at other races? That's my like, yeah, shit just went fine. And then everything blows up in my face. And that's your like death march tab. Like, how am I just going to get this done? How do I get the buckle at the slowest possible speed I can handle? And print all 3 of those off, have them all with your crew, have them on your phone, have them on paper, whatever you want. But like, have those relevant, because as you're going through the race, you'll quickly know which ones are in and which ones are out. Like if you're having a day and you're just like, oh, I've never been better, like you're going to get it. Like just go for it. And other people, they'll be going up little ground and they're just like, nope, today's not the day. This is going to be a struggle the whole way home. And you can immediately pivot really quickly. And that's important from a headspace perspective of not letting the fact that you're not performing to what you wanted derail the rest of the race for you. So keep this in mind. This is still just averages, but it's a really good tool to give you a starting point, especially if you've never run the course or this is your first 100. Ultra Pacer is another version of this, offers a little bit more manipulation in terms of like filtering whether you're better on uphills or downhills or how long you want to spend in specific aid stations. Open Split is just like the really quick version of this. So play around with both. All right. Let's also talk about pacers real quick. This one I can cover really quickly. You do not need pacers. You do not need crew. If you do want to use them, this portion of the website right here has all of the specifics about them. I would encourage you to look through this before picking your people. We do have a fair amount of like complications about getting to Cottonwood and Hancock that I think make this not a great race for certain people. If you, for example, my wife and business partner Kelsey ran this race a couple years ago. She brought her elderly parents out to be a part of the race. And we had to be very specific about like where they went because some aid stations are just not comfortable for certain people. So just be strategic. You're the runner. It's your day. you're the most important person out there. And if you bring a crew or a pacer who's a liability, you've shot yourself in the foot. Don't do it. Or if you're going to bring them because you just really want that person present, but they're not necessarily going to be an additive experience to you as a runner, put them in the right place. Send them to Monarch where it's really safe and comfortable to drive, and you're going to be hallucinating anyway. So who cares, right? Or go to Blanks or Raspberry 2 or something like that, right? You can choreograph this. So just be very strategic, because it is not uncommon that especially first time 100 milers show up to Hilo, they over engineer their crews and they end up really struggling because of just how stressful it is to be a crew member at a 100-mile race. They will be exhausted as you are. They'll be as cranky as you are. They'll eat as poorly as you've been eating. Like crewing at Hilo especially sucks. So I don't know, just approach it with like a lot of eyes open. Last thing I want to cover is drop bags, because we just talked about pacers. If you don't want to go with pacers, I tried to make this pretty generous. If right here is where you get to see the places you can put a drop bag at. This is a really good spread. Having run a fair amount of hundreds fully solo, like this is a good spread. You can totally approach this with drop bags. So don't be afraid to do that. And then the last thing that's dropped in the chat, but we didn't really hit it, wildlife on the course. I mean, there are mountain lions, there are black bears. Your most likely animal in Colorado to cause you bodily injury is a moose. And there's a fair number of moose from from Tin Cup to Hancock. Usually actually the last 2 years, there's been a moose in the aid station at Hancock at one point. So that's it. We've never had any actual attacks or injuries from wildlife, so I wouldn't stress it, but that does often come up. So that's pretty much all I had. I'll stay online as long as we have other kind of questions straggling in, but it kind of wraps up what I would call like the vast majority of the key to know information. So thanks for sticking through this and being a part of it. For everybody that's going to hang out and ask questions, go ahead and start dropping them in the chat or jumping off of mute, and let's start covering whatever we didn't cover today. Oh, and we'll do a specific version of this for crews and pacers later in the year, where we actually go through like specific logistics just for them. So if you're like worried about how complicated this is, don't worry about that. We do that in usually June. And then before the pre-race meeting in BV, when you're here in the Swatch, we'll do another specific meeting just for crews, just to make sure we cover all the bases there. So don't stress about that just yet. I'll send that in my next email to you guys. But anyway, for everybody who's bouncing off, thanks so much. Catch you next time. Everybody who's got questions, let's start. I always take silence as a sign that I'm so good at my job that you guys have nothing to ask. So pop my bubble, ask me something. Amanda's asking about puppy updates. The dog I was holding, her name's Rio. She's almost 5 months old and she's close to 45, 50 pounds. So we decided that we should name her Rio Grande, since we think she's gonna be kind of big. So she's the new addition to our pack. Jocelyn asked, are dogs allowed on the course? That is a great question. Dogs are not allowed inside aid stations anywhere on the race, which we define as roughly 100 feet. They are not allowed at Cottonwood at all, since that's the shuttled aid station. But at other normal crew accessible aid stations, dogs are allowed so long as they're not in the aid themselves. At the finish line, it's a broader section. So it's, I think, like we say 300 feet, which is basically anywhere around where people are finishing. It's a really, I love dogs. I have 3. It's a terrible race for dogs. The cars get stupid hot. There's really limited shade where you're parking, and dogs just aren't really meant to be 100-mile races. So I would encourage you to get a doggy daycare, doggy sleepover, something like that. Or if not, like if you got an Airbnb and they're crate trained and they can stay safe, like totally great option for them. Lots of good stuff you can do out like in between crewing, where dogs would be super pumped to be out there, but just coming up. Eyes wide open. We've had a few dog fights, which have kind of unfortunately ruined dog access at the race. So good question. What else we got? We have 28 people, 32 people in here right now that aren't asking questions, which means you either all fell asleep or you all are just so loath to turn in tonight.
Hi, it's Chris Lloyd here in Denver, and I wanted to just ask, do you have dates set for group runs or any type of runs to preview the course as a group?
Yep, good question. The only time I have penciled in right now is on our trail work weekend, which is the first weekend in June this year. So we've got two trail work days with CFI up on Mount Princeton. And in the past, it's been pretty infrequent, but in the past we've tried to do alternating days. We'll have like basically on each day, we'll try to have like a loosely organized group run for folks. And that way, you know, folks who are coming out maybe to work trail work on Sunday, they can do the group run on Saturday or vice versa, something like that. Or for folks that aren't doing a trail work, they can just come out whatever day they prefer. So I'm hoping to do that this year. It's always one of those things that kind of falls on the wayside just because trail work weekend's kind of complicated to organize. So I tend to drop it, but I think we've got some people who raised their hands to help with this, that I think we can make it happen this year. So that would be the only thing on the calendar at the moment. There is a women's group in the area that Kelsey and some other ladies in the valley are starting called Women of the Swatch, and they're planning on a women's group preview run for Hilo sometime in June. I need to be fact checked on that, but there is something on that. The thing I'm hoping I can get to is the Facebook group. It needs to die. It's just Facebook's miserable. So I want to transition that to like Discord or Slack or something like that. And there's quite a few people, even just in this chat, but also in emails and other conversations, who want to like just put their name out on a weekend and see if anybody else wants to jump in, kind of situation. So if I can get my ducks in a row, we'll set that up too. So there'll be more impromptu options, but it's kind of the long-winded answer to that question, Chris.
No, that's great though. So we do have, it's already in the books then for June 6th and 7th. So those dates are good so if that weekend's open for me, I can come up that weekend and trail work and also look at the course. Is that correct?
I would say as we're 100% on the trail work, we're 80% confirmed on the run. And I just need to lock that in. We've been kind of dragging our feet because of conditions, but yeah, I would say at this point, I would plan on being able to do it that way.
And do we need to sign up for that? How does that work?
Historically, we've just done a show up for it. I think we'll probably do it that way too, where we'll just have someone who's going to be there either way, like hell or high water, and whoever shows up, off they go. If that person who's organizing it wants to do an RSVP, then I'll set one up for them. But that's something we'll figure out here in the next couple of weeks.
That sounds great. Thank you.
No problem. Good questions. Someone dropped Tyler asked if they signed up for volunteer cleanup and they're on the wait list. Sorry about the wait list.
Good. I'm happy to do the cleanup regardless.
Well, I would just stay on it, man. I mean, it's just yeah, I don't know, whatever you need to do is fine. There's never an issue filling those shifts. So if you want to hold it, you can hold it. If you want to dump and clear your schedule, you can. Either way, the race is totally fine. So I'd say just prioritize what you think is going to give you the best headspace.
Thank you all.
Sweet. Someone asked about a RAV4. Okay, so Juana is asking, a RAV4 all-wheel drive, can it make it to all the aid stations and pick up points? Yes. Yeah, a RAV4. I own a RAV4 actually. I made the terrible life choice of lifting that RAV4, which I don't recommend, but I'm gonna lift it more though, so whatever. Anyways, moral of the story is yes, you can get a RAV4 everywhere you want to go. It's always weather dependent. If the weather's super bad, you will just drive slower in that type of vehicle. But I wouldn't stress it. The worst road just naturally is getting to Blanks. The middle section of Blanks is just really rotted out right now. But if it's dry, no issues. You'll be totally fine. And then Hancock is always just like a conga line of cars because you get stuck behind a Prius or something that has no business being up there. Good questions. What else we got? Okay, well, if that's everything folks want to talk about, I think we'll go ahead and wrap it up for this year. So thank you to everybody again for jumping in and being a part of this. Looking forward to seeing you all in person. I will upload this sometime in the next 2 to 4 weeks. So if somebody missed this and they ask you, we'll have it up online. We'll do a crew specific one. As always, shoot me an email if you have any questions. Always happy to help. Make sure to get your trail work done and keep training hard. And we'll see you guys in July. So,
Thanks, Caleb.
yeah, thank you all.